So it makes me feel like, well, I feel a little less prepared than I thought I was at first, because I thought that I'd kind of exhausted the catalog of your work that was publicly available, but I kept uncovering more, you know?
There's some old stuff on there.
There is, yeah, there's some stuff out there, man. But the thing is, I first knew you as Jesse Gang of Music. And so it took me a while to figure out that was a clever play on your last name.
To be honest, I don't think I even came up with that. Somebody must have just posted it, because I was just trying to put my name, and then because like with the handles, it all gets connected. So people who didn't know me personally thought that was my I was going. Yeah, so it's just like
it is clever if it works well, you know.
Yeah. Gang of Music.
Yeah, so it took me a while to figure out that was actually your last name, but and let me just apologize to you right now. I have been recovering from a cold. I didn't want to I feel fine, but my voice is maybe a bit grating. I hope it's not too painful on your end.
You're totally fine. You're totally fine. I just went to a food and wine festival last night, so awesome. I was worried that my voice would be the one not working this morning.
Were you there for eating and drinking, or for playing music?
Just eating and drinking. My brother's fiance is a chef for Bon Appetit, so she was one of the chefs on for the food festival. So yeah, just hanging out, enjoying cool. myself.
That's awesome, man. That is super awesome. Well, you know, I don't usually open with a bio. Usually I'll just slide right into chatting, but I feel like maybe it wouldn't be too out of place for me to throw this in here. In fact, tell me if this feels like a fun joke. So I'm just going to start reading for a sec here and see how long it takes for this to set in as clearly this is a joke, right? Jesse's Gang, based in Chicago in the 80s. Jesse's Gang was an urban contemporary house trio that was led by the producer, songwriter, and vocalist Jesse Saunders. Wait, that's not you.
Yeah, that's fine. No, that works.
Have you heard of Jesse's Gang before?
No.
That's the thing. Where I came to your music as it's Jesse Gang of Music, not this is a guy named Jesse Ofgang, right? I was like, Jesse's Gang, let me get some background, you know? No, it's not the same thing, no. No, here's your real bio. Jesse. Jesse has a unique musical background. He's studied the Highland bagpipes, uilleann bagpipes, border bagpipes, whistles, and more. I know there's more than that. He's got an undergraduate degree on jazz drum kit.
Yep.
Member of the 16-time World Pipe Band Champions Shots and Dykehead. You played with Shots and Dykehead?
I did. To be honest, that needs to be updated because I'm no longer a member. I was a member.
No, you. Well, okay, I see. Was instead of is, but I was gonna say like don't stop saying you were on the band. That's impressive, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that was it was intense, but totally worth it.
Performed at Caesar's Palace. We've all been to Caesar's Palace, but you performed there. That's the difference there, right?
I have. That was a long time. I was a teenager when I did that.
Look at that. Like I said, you got some stuff out there, man. And then was it pretty recently that you completed work at the Royal Conservatoire of Scotland? Or was that a while ago?
Yeah, that was back I finished in 2020. So I started there before COVID hit, and then I would have been there for another year at least, but when everything went online, I finished up in 2020. And that actually was where a lot of the recordings came from, and where I learned about I tried to make the most of not being able to perform live and dove into the audio production and like how to collaborate with people around the world.
I love some of that stuff that you did, yeah. So that was like part. Was that like officially part of your coursework, or was it just like something in order to perform, as it were, while you were busy studying, that was the way to do it?
So that was. I think the answer is yes to both of those questions, because that was really the only way I could play with other people during that time. But I had to select a final project for to complete my master's. So that was what I suggested. I was
Hey, I think maybe a bandwidth dip or something there. Lost you for a sec.
It's coming through. Okay, it's back. I don't know why.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that's the only time. I have done a few interviews, usually with people who are like in countries where there's not much Wi-Fi going on, and it becomes a thing. Like every 10 minutes, we just reset.
I apologize. I don't know what that was because my Wi-Fi was still there.
Looking
It just
strong,
said you lost. Yeah, it just said you lost a connection to CleanFeed, and I had to refresh the page.
Gotcha. Well, maybe that's a great place to start, because I was thinking like maybe we open, instead of opening with the drones on this episode, we usually open with just drones going. We could open with with the audio from one of those videos, and maybe I don't know, which one do you think would be a good opener?
What are you looking for? Something like up tempo to catch people.
Yeah, sure. Something that sounds cool. Because I think Lullaby for Mel you did a lovely job with that, and I thought that'd be a strong finisher. That'd be a great lovely way to end. And so, I don't know, maybe the MSR set or that Irish Genius one. Let's do the MSR set.
Yeah, the MSR is great.
So we'll open with that with Jen Butterworth. So as you know, we've been talking. I don't know when we'll bring the talking in at some point, but we will at some point. It'll have already happened. And then, so you tell me about your time at the Royal Conservatoire. I can't help but say conservatoire like I'm very fancy. And then and tell me about the MSR set as well, if you would.
Yeah, so my time at the Royal Conservatoire, and they do say conservatoire. I got scolded for calling it a conservatory when I was over there.
Wow.
And now everybody over here makes fun of me when I say conservatoire.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience, and just living in Glasgow, whether you're at RCS or not, it's like you throw a stone and you hit a great piper. It's crazy, not just the competition piping scene there, but the Scottish folk music scene. It's so alive with some of the best Scottish and Irish music in the world. So
it feels to me so much like we are as bagpipe enthusiasts. You know, like we're a community that is so heavily in diaspora, and like our Mecca is the there's such a small place, if that makes sense. Like most of us are outsiders to the birthplace, if that you know what I mean. And so
yeah,
you did the Hajj thing. You made it. You did the journey.
Yeah, it really is. You use the word Mecca. It really is the Mecca of the piping world. And it's interesting to like think about how even piping in the States or Canada or Australia, a lot of it can be traced back to Glasgow. I think about my teacher back on the East Coast in Connecticut. He was 79 years old when I met him, but he immigrated to the States, I want to say back in the late 50s or 60s, and he's from Clydebank. So even me as a piper from Connecticut can be traced back to just outside Glasgow.
They're just a step or two back, and I bet most of us end up there in our what's the word for our pedagogy? Is that the word?
Pedagogy, for the teaching of teaching.
Right. Yeah.
So it's hard to get away from there, and it's still, you think about like the top grade 1 bands, most of them have rehearsals either in Glasgow or not far from Glasgow. Even like Inverary, and you think of them as up in Inverary, but I'm pretty sure that they have some rehearsals in Glasgow or like Fillmore. It's pretty wild. A night out, you're bump into any number of great pipers.
I've never been to Europe myself, in any part of Europe at all. But so like aside from the high concentration of like really good pipers and piping history and stuff, it also blows my mind to imagine. I'm not only from the United States, but from like the newest part of the United States, by which I mean like the most recently integrated into the country parts. Not Hawaii or Alaska, but toward that end. I'm out west anyway, right? To be in a place where not only can you throw a stone one way and hit a great piper, you could throw a stone another way and hit any number of like buildings that have been standing there for 3 times as long as my country's even existed,
Absolutely.
Or longer,
It is so funny to think about, like, really how young America is in general, but compare when you're over there. I'm like, you go to a church, an old church, to me, like an old New England church, seems old, but then
it's nothing,
that church is, it's just a baby.
The people who built that old New England church, their great-great-great-great-grandparents built the church on the other side.
Exactly.
Speaking of old New England churches, one of the things that I loved seeing you do not too long ago was playing your pipes, or was it a whistle with the pedal board?
It was a whistle with the pedal board.
I'm sitting here at my makeshift organ desk. I'm not a good organ player, but an enthusiast for sure. And so seeing you do that really got me excited. I love seeing that.
I play. I'm not a great organist myself, but I do play, and I'm trying to do more with the pedals and whistles, and I've done some with the pedals and uilleann pipes, but I haven't posted any of that yet. It hasn't met the standard.
Man, that's the next frontier, right? When you can have your chanter playing your melody and then have like your regulators on the alto part and your feet on the bass, right?
Someday.
Tell the church choir they can take the day off. Jesse's got it.
That's the idea, but baby steps.
Yeah.
Just whistle and pedals for now.
Yeah.
But for me, I came from playing drum set. So the coordination between the hands and the feet, I have a little bit of experience there, but it's still weird to try to play a whistle tune and then have my feet not tapping the pulse and trying to, how it is as an organist of trying to play a bunch of different rhythms at the same time and have it all.
I use the add bass button most of the time, just because it's one thing too many, man.
I wish I had. So I'm so lucky to play on the organ. I do, but it does not have that function. It's a tracker. This is becoming an organ podcast, not a piping podcast.
Right.
but you can drone on that as well.
For sure, absolutely.
I do love the sound of organ and pipes together.
Oh, they go together great. I was introduced to the idea of mixing their wild energies by Timothy Cummings. By the way, you're like generally in that part of the world. Do you ever come across Timothy Cummings in like directly personally?
No, I not directly.
You guys almost look like you could even be cousins. A couple of New England bagpipers,
We'll have to play some tunes sometime.
Yeah, that'd be great. Now, actually, speaking of which, appearance-wise, and speaking of there being a lot of stuff from your earlier days out there on the internet, did you know that if anybody listening wants to know what Jesse Ofgang looks like, you can find a photo of him playing drums shirtless in a kilt with long hair. You got to dig a little, but it's out there.
Oh my god! That must have been, my excuse was it was a very hot day at that festival.
Sure.
It must have been.
That's probably going to have to be the cover art for this episode.
Oh my god, that was a long time ago. If I still had hair, that was a long time ago. When we say hair, we're talking about hair down to below my backside. I never had a haircut until I was like 24 years old.
Wow, man, that's pretty darn impressive. Here I am. Just earlier this week, I got impatient with it touching my ears and like shaved my own hair off. I do not have that kind of patience.
Well, I didn't know any better. Now that I have short hair, I'm like, wow, that was a pain. That was a pain.
If you're gonna do it first thing in your life, right? Don't save it for later.
Yep. You'll never be able to tolerate it.
Now, in those days, you were playing with the band. Did you pronounce it Mac Tallamore?
Yeah, Mac Tallamore. Great Echo or Big Echo would be the translation. Gotcha. Yeah, I played with. That was all my family.
That's your family.
Brother, sister, mother. Yep.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, it was a family affair. We did it for a while.
You put out a few albums. There's some stuff out there.
Yeah, we did 4 albums, and that was before like there was kind of that explosion of home recording. So we were doing it all through studios. It was kind of cool. It was great at a young age for me to get to experience recording 4 albums in a studio, both the really positive aspects of it and the stressful aspects of like, okay, we paid for however many days, we got to get this album done in 4 days. And it's exhausting when you have those 10-hour days in a recording studio and then keeping pipes in tune. Probably if I listen back to those albums, I'd probably be like, maybe I didn't keep them in tune as much as I had hoped.
No, I think you pulled it off well. As a person who's been digging through them deeply for the last couple of weeks, I can tell you I'm impressed. Especially because so much of my interpretation of the world is like very me-centric. Like I tend very strongly to think that if I just barely found out about something, it's because it just got discovered, and not that it's been around for a long time and I was just ignorant of it. And it feels to me like in those years, I never heard of a B-flat chanter, like a chanter that was made to be played at concert pitch. And so it feels to me like you must have been getting a standard chanter and just like working with the reed. But maybe I'm wrong. Did you find some concert pitch stuff to work with?
So it was much less common back then.
Yeah.
We're talking back in the early 2000s. That I think people were playing with other instruments, like there was the Tannehill Weavers, but it was much. You didn't hear it quite as much, and then you had guys like Gordon Duncan, and it started to be this explosion of using the highland pipes in more what I'd call creative settings. But yeah, it was really hard to tune down to pitch, especially when you'd be playing a festival that hits 95 degrees Fahrenheit.
Right.
To stay at concert pitch. Even now with a B-flat chanter can be quite challenging. I think I was able to purchase, I forget what maker, a B-flat chanter around 2005, something like that. Or I know what some other people had done was find like vintage chanters. Were just just flat. That's how they made them.
Back before the creep was quite so strong.
Before people were trying to get their pipe band to sound brighter and brighter.
Yeah.
I do think that is going to be eventually a trend that goes away, that the pipes will pick a pitch so that they can use more, play with other instruments more easily.
And aside from being able to play with other instruments more easily, I don't know about where you are at in the country or where you play in general, but I know for me, geographically, where I'm at right here at least, if that's a factor, B-flat chanters are way more balanced and stay like rock steady for a lot longer than what I'm used to. Like, I would much rather play a B-flat chanter than any of my band chanters for those reasons.
Yeah, so that's actually interesting. I feel somewhat ashamed to say this, but I so rarely play anything but my B-flat chanter right now that I can't even comment on the stability of what I call a sharp chanter, because in my world at this point,
that's what's weird, is what I would call a normal one. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
Now I have promised a few students who are playing sharper chanters that I would get my sharp chanter going so I could play with them. But yeah, no, I think it was that I wanted to get my sound on my B flat chanter to a place that I was happy with. So I wanted to set up my pipes so that was the best sound, rather than having my pipes set up for a chanter that I don't really use in the context that I'm not competing in solos. I haven't for the past 15 years. And I'm not playing with a band right now. So I have really, other than a solo piping gig, I would have no use for a sharp chanter.
And of course, for those solo gigs, you can always go play B flat. It's not going to be like, hang on a sec, the piper at the wedding didn't sound bright enough.
Exactly. And even if a piper shows up, they might just comment of like, oh, your pipes are sound a little bit flat, and I would tell them why they sound flat. But and hopefully they don't. It's not because a note is ridiculously out of tune. But yeah, no, so that's where that's mostly what I do if I play a solo gig. I'll just have my B flat chanter going. I'll say that.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that now the opposite side, and if it's a funeral in the winter in New England, no matter what chanter I'm playing, it's very flat.
Yeah, then your B flat's suddenly a concert A, and whoa, hey, that's fun.
That'll be the next one. I would have loved to have a set eventually entirely in A, but
yeah. The debate, I guess, is it even a debate? I don't know. Maybe all of us are ready for B flat to become standard, and we're just kind of all sitting around waiting for somebody in a position of authority or something to say, let's do it.
or conversely, I think that we're might be settle on B natural, because when you listen to some of these solo players who are pushing 490, they're very close to concert B natural.
Interesting.
At that point. And I know G1 just released their B natural chanter.
I saw Piper Alley put something out about a B natural chanter that she used, and I thought to myself, maybe that was a typo. Maybe she meant B flat, because surely she meant B flat. But no, that's a thing then, huh? And here I am. I just bought my concert A chanter. Now I have to buy another one. Right.
Yes, it's like owning a boat. This hobby of ours.
Totally.
But the B. So and I think probably the B chanter you wouldn't really need. You'd obviously have to adjust the drum reeds, but I think because pipes have been getting sharper and sharper, I don't really think you would need. I don't know this because I haven't played one, but I don't think you need to do much special to your drones to get that to work. So I will have to get one of them as well. Skip a few lunches and then buy
make that happen.
my chanter.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Now, I'm curious. Like, while we're kind of toward the beginning of your musical career here with the family band, do you happen to be familiar with the band Wookiefoot?
I know they had pipes in a song.
Yeah.
Or small pipes, right?
No, they had highland pipes in a few songs actually.
Okay.
If you're into like hippie philosophy, this is a great group. I do like Wookiefoot quite a lot. But here's the thing: they've got an album that came out in 2012. It's called Ready or Not. It's one of my favorites of theirs. It's really great. And they've got a tune on there called All Together. Oh wait. Is that it? No, it's from Be Fearless and Play. Another great album. But the tune is called All Together. They've got Highland pipes in there. When I listen to that tune, and I listen to U.S. reggae.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, I'm like, hang on a sec. Was Mark Murphy in the crowd when you played that tune? Because I'm not accusing Wookiefoot of stealing anything, because I think it's possible. I think in both cases, Itchy Fingers gets used. So maybe that's the connection that's happening in my head. Is that right? Did Itchy Fingers come in U.S. reggae, or am I thinking wrong?
So Itchy Fingers was a track on the same album.
Oh.
In U.S. reggae, I'm trying to think what tune was in there. I don't think it was Itchy Fingers. I'll have to re-listen to
maybe it's the fact that it was on the album is why it was swimming around in my brain. But
yeah, no, I'll have to check out more of Wookiefoot's stuff. I was working on. I wanted to learn more about farming, so I was working on an organic farm one summer, and the manager was a big Wookiefoot
that totally
fan.
makes sense.
And when he found out I played bagpipes, yes, it was an organic farm.
Totally makes sense. Yeah, that's Wookiefoot country.
Yeah, so that's where I first discovered Wookiefoot, and he played me some tracks with. I think the track I listened to had smallpipes, but I'm gonna have to take a dive into their albums and give more of a listen.
Oh, I could recommend it. My kids maybe are getting sick of Wookiefoot because of how often I use their songs to quote little words of wisdom to my children when they've like misbehaved or something. I'm like, hey, stop crying, because if it ain't all right, it ain't the end. And they're like, shut up, Dad.
They're like, get your philosophy from someplace else.
Yeah, exactly.
But I love it, the bagpipes and hippie jam band.
Oh yeah,
crossover.
Dude. Any kind of fusion is exciting, right? But yeah, it feels kind of unique. And actually, that means let's pull in another track here, because it's another one that speaking of combining bagpipes with stuff, it's not weird to combine bagpipes with harp. That totally makes sense. But it is, to me, like weird in that I'm like, whoa, that I imagine that it must have been challenging to combine highland pipes with a harp, which is what you did with which one was the track?
So I did that with two. Lullaby for Mel would have been the one with highland pipes.
That's
and
right.
harp.
And I am still thinking, like, let's listen to that one on our way out of the episode. But maybe, do you want to tell me a little bit about that? And maybe with it, maybe it's a catalyst to talk to me a bit about, like, what recording is like for you these days, and what are you discovering, or what things have you found work well and stuff like that? Because just the imbalance of the volume level, I can kind of think to myself, that must have been a challenge to get bagpipes and harp to blend.
Yes.
Highland pipes specifically.
And, I mean, this is the magic of the recording studio. And I'm going to spill the beans on a lot of people who
No, spill them, man. I think that's healthy for all of us.
Release YouTube videos, and most of who we listen to and most of what we see, whether it's bagpipers or, like, I'm a huge Jacob Collier fan, a lot of what we see is the audio is recorded separately, and then it's truly just a live music video. So blending the harp and the bagpipes, if we were just playing acoustically, like you would see in the video for Lullaby for Mel next to each other, that would have been extremely difficult.
Standing way too close to each other for that, huh?
Yeah, unless you have very close mics or pickups.
Yeah.
So the audio we actually recorded the audio for that. I was living in Scotland when I recorded the audio for that, and she recorded that in the closet of her apartment at the time.
That's so
cool. She would send me her recording from Connecticut, someplace in Connecticut. I was in living on
somewhere in Connecticut.
Connecticut, yep. And I was living on a sheep farm in the borders of Scotland.
Is that where you were staying while you were at the conservatoire?
That when COVID hit. So at the conservatoire, I was living in downtown Glasgow.
Okay, because I was imagining you commuting from a sheep farm to get to school every day.
Yeah, the most Scottish thing ever.
Yeah.
No, I was living on Sauchiehall Hall Street. It's like it was very easy to get to RCS from there, but I don't think I slept all year. That was bar and nightclub central, so it was it's a little bit difficult. I could practice my pipes at any hour though, and nobody complained. But yeah, so she would send me the recordings. I was using Pro Tools at the time and just using a click track to line everything up, and then I made an outline for all the other pipers on that track, and they'd have to be listening while they played along. That was actually really challenging to get the pipes close to in tune for 8 pipers, and then have everybody synced up. That particular recording was probably the most difficult to coordinate. I think there's 8 or 9 pipers on it, and harp, and then filming all the videos. So the video for it, Haley, the harpist, and she also went to RCS, but I think several years ago before I went. So we, both being from Connecticut, we met up to film the videos. Because one of my other recordings she wrote the tune for, and it was based on the farm that we recorded that video on.
Gotcha.
So to get back to your original question about balancing the levels, it was a lot easier to do because I was using Pro Tools, and then the sound, you're not hearing the actual sound from what you're seeing on the screen. And I hate to burst the YouTubers bubble, but that's how a lot of people do it. Some of my recordings I'm doing both at the same time.
Yeah.
A big giveaway that a person is not doing them at the same time is if they're not wearing headphones.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
And they're performing with somebody else. There's a great chance that it's not a live recording, because they need to be able to hear a click track or the other instruments, and that would show up on the microphone. This is getting very technical at this point, not to bore your listeners.
I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that this is something that everybody's going to be into. You know, it's part of what we're all consuming these videos all the time and stuff like that. And honestly, Jesse, like, I remember when Ross Miller came out with his album The Roke, and he was perfectly willing to say out loud that he'd recorded the drones separately from the chanter. And why does that? It shouldn't have been taboo in any way, but for some reason it felt like he was revealing a secret, you know? But the thing is, it gives us all permission to be like, oh, when I tried to record myself and it didn't sound like Ross Miller on The Roke, there's a reason why. You know, it's okay to, like, do things professionally when you're trying to make a professional thing. It's totally okay.
Right. And I also think it's kind of important that people talk about our process, because it's not just in the piping world, but in the recording world in general, there's almost an obsession with perfection. And nobody is as good as their recording sound, is like what I like to say, because even in the classical world, they have as many takes as they need.
Yeah.
You can splice in a good audio engineer. You can edit multiple takes to fit them together. So, and there's nothing wrong with that as a process. But I think because I teach a lot, I try to tell my students, like, hey, I make a lot more mistakes, and even when I release things that are far from perfect. But the thing about being in the studio is if I make a big mistake, I just don't post that. And
right.
So I tell my students, like, when they think they're making mistakes, I'm like, hey, I'm a sloppy jalopy all over the place. But that is interesting with Ross admitting to that. I also record my drones separately sometimes if it is a track that I think I'm going to need to do a lot of editing for. Because one thing about that solid drone sound, I can't it's much more difficult to do. I can't splice 2 takes together if I'm taking the drones and the chanter at the same time, because you'll hear that drone change. So I can very carefully splice 2 tracks together if it's like on a grace note, and I don't think the listener would hear.
Yeah.
But if I recorded the drones at the same time, that would be exceptionally difficult to do.
Yeah.
And it's actually, I was taking audio production lessons with a guy named Duncan Lyle. He's a great bass player, a trad bass player, and he's an audio engineer. And that was his advice when he records bagpipes. He was like, really, if you can record your drones separately, it makes the editing process so much easier. Because the other thing is, when you're playing, like Ross Miller plays with other instruments all the time, mixing the drones in can be quite challenging. And if you have it connected to the chanter, if it's all going at once, sometimes you don't want the drones as loud. If somebody's playing a chord that really clashes with that B flat, I ran into that with the harp sometimes, that if a note was ringing out and the drones were blaring away, it can be really muddy. And then the other thing about the drones is they take up so much of the sound stage if you really have them going. And then it's constantly like, what do you want the listener to be focused on? If I'm playing something on solo pipes, if it was just a pipe solo, I would probably almost always record the drones together with the chanter, because I want that full, rich sound. I want that balance. But as soon as I start recording with other instruments, I might not want the drones as prominent. Sometimes you do. Again, it depends on what you're going for creatively.
Yeah.
But the drones do take up a lot of that sound stage, and then there's only so much our ears can hear at once. So that's... and it's also interesting to talk to pipers versus non-pipers of how much they want to hear the drones.
Isn't that interesting? Like, it's like I try playing with other instruments as a hobby sometimes, with my friends who play folk instruments and stuff like that. And it's funny how often the drones are a real barrier for my friends. That they're like, well, what chord do I switch to now? Because your drones are still going, And it's like, oh, well, I guess to some degree, just imagine my drones aren't there, But like, if we play bagpipes, we probably have all naturally already been weeded out as the type of person who loves a drone, and that's just not everybody.
Yeah, I feel like I'm drawn to even music that has drones that are not pipe music. There's some Indian music that
too,
really
man.
is
Absolutely.
heavy drone use. Even in choral music, if I hear a high soprano drone, I love the sound of a pedal tone.
Yeah. I've wondered before if that's it's just part of the wiring that some of us just, whether it's choral stuff, it's hurdy-gurdies, it's, sitars that have a constant thing in the background, whatever the instrument or anything, we just like that. We're drawn to
the sound of the drone, or a Shruti box. I love
for sure,
that.
Yeah.
I think any music is better with a drone, as long as the harmonies are able to fit within
At
it.
least sometimes, right? As long as they come in and out here and there.
But it's also interesting from a guitar player's perspective. I was playing some uilleann pipes, and the tune was in A minor, but I had the D drone still on. And it worked, but it really changed the chords that he was choosing to play.
Oh, interesting.
Because the way he was hearing it off of that D drum. So it can be a cool creative tool, and sometimes it does just get in the way. That's something I really like about the uilleann pipes, is having the ability to shut them off when you want to, if you really want to focus on A minor rather than having the big D drone there. And I'll do that with highland pipes as well, play without drones, but I think there is something about the drones that mellows out the chanter a bit. So listening to a highland pipe chanter without drones, I even for my ears as a piper, can be a bit harsh.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I don't know. I'm not trying to say that this is hard hitting frontier frontier exploration kind of stuff to talk about it openly here. Like, probably generally people are already aware and stuff like that, right? But it does feel a little bit like you say, in the position of a teacher yourself, right? Like, clarifying expectations a bit, demystifying a bit, I guess. It's not to take away from professional pipers playing. Like, we love listening to it, of course, and we will remain fans forever regardless, right? But understanding a little bit about why I can't sit down and in one take sound like... I mean, there are great pipers out there who can sit down and in one take sound like they sound, right? But so I'm not trying to take away from people's skill in any way, but understanding the magic of how it goes together is certainly interesting.
Oh yeah, and I mean, there's amazing players that you just sit there recording all day, and like it doesn't even matter if there's a mistake. But there's also, even I'm sure even Fred Morrison, when he's recording his album, doesn't just go in and play 11 tracks and then he's done in an hour. It's probably multiple takes. I don't know his recording process, but yeah, it's a different thing being in the studio or doing home recordings than performing a live show.
Yeah, which you've done plenty of live shows too. Do you maybe take me back in some of your chronological story? Playing with a family band. When did this start? When did pipes start? Was it something encouraged by your parents, or did you come home from school one day and be like, guess what? I want to play bagpipes.
So I actually, it came from my mother. We had, I'm one of four children, so I have 3 siblings. And we all had to play a musical instrument. It was just a rule in the house. But I took piano lessons as a little kid, and I didn't stick with it. And then they tried to get me to learn the violin, and I hated it.
So far, this is sounding like a real classic story.
Oh my God!
I was supposed to take piano. I didn't stick with it. They wanted to make me take violin. I hated it. So this is
yeah, violin. The teacher was coming, and I wasn't a bad kid. I was just obstinate, and I climbed up into a tree.
Really?
And I would not come down for my lesson. Now, granted, I'm 7 or 8 years old here, so I'm giving myself some of a pass. But yeah, so that was my last violin lesson, was atop that tree. The poor teacher. And then, so I took some time off, and my mother decided just on a whim to buy me a practice chanter. And
had she played pipes, or did she know other pipers? Why would she play the chanter?
She had always, so growing up, she would be listening to the Tannehill Weavers, the Pogues. Like, she loved traditional music. Mm-hmm. And she played some. She was a bit of a percussionist herself. So she's like, okay, we'll have you try pipes. And I just got, because I knew nothing about the world, and she really didn't either. We got lucky with this man named Tommy Shearer, who lived in Newtown, another piper in the town I grew up in, who's also a very good piper in his own right. I was going to take lessons from him, and he was going off to college at the time, so he gave me the number of his teacher. And yeah, it was just a word of mouth thing. We wouldn't have known anybody, but this guy turned out to be an amazing teacher and player. He was, like I said, he was 79 when I met him. I could not understand a word he said my first I was this 12-year-old, and he still had that the accent, and coming from just outside Glasgow, a little bit of a stronger,
the more difficult of the range. Yeah,
yeah, but it was such an.
I've heard that before. That's funny.
Yeah, and it was such an amazing experience. I always joke, like, that guy changed my life because he was such a good teacher. I joke with people, I'm like, if not for him, I would have gone to medical school and I'd be a doctor right now. And instead I play bagpipes all the time. So it's his fault.
But you know, one of the lucky ones who got a really good start then.
Yeah, no,
so many of us have to relearn stuff after we've started, you know.
That and that's probably the most common thing that happens to me when people come to take lessons from me is that the first little while is relearning things. But he really gave me that foundation, and it came full circle when I was taking a class at RCS with Willie McCallum, and Willie asked me, who my teacher was, as I think he was complimenting my playing. He's like, okay, well, so you sound pretty good. In America, it's hard to find instructors. We live in such a big country. Like you and I both live in America, and where it's probably easier for me to get to Scotland than it would be to get to where.
Yeah.
And he asked me who I studied with, so I said Tommy Shure, and Willie had heard that name because the band he played in growing up, Tommy had been in before. He knew of my teacher from back whenever he was still living in Scotland. Wow. So it was kind of cool for me to go back to that. Like, wow, that full circle.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super cool. Now, and that was Highland Pipes exclusively, right?
Highland Pipes exclusively. I didn't start on the uilleann pipes or the border pipes till much later. Uilleann pipes, I had always wanted to play them, but they are not an inexpensive instrument to start on.
Yeah, so, for so many of us, that's like the pie in the sky thing. It's like, maybe never. I might not live long enough to get uilleann pipes.
I might never make enough. My thought was I might never make enough money to be able to afford one of these sets. And I think that is something that the uilleann pipe community would really benefit from having a less expensive. And it's hard because the makers are so artisan and it's hard for them to make a living. It's just very difficult to get started on that instrument if you're not near a piper's club that can loan you an instrument, because people will ask me, they're like, how much am I going to get spent? I would love to play uilleann pipes. How much do I need to spend? How much is a set? And I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah. You hate to crush somebody's dreams right then and there, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, but that being said, I was fortunate enough. It's really, if you're willing to dig around and you find these pipers clubs, oftentimes there are loaner sets. I was fortunate another piper had a starter set that he let me borrow that I could kind of get started without making the multiple $1,000 commitment, just to know that I was going to do it and stick with it. And then finally, when I graduated college and had a job, I bought a car and a set of uilleann pipes.
Which of the two was more expensive?
The uilleann pipes.
Yeah.
The uilleann pipes. Yeah. This wasn't the finest car ever, but it was definitely the uilleann pipes.
This is the classic musician thing where you use a vehicle that's like monetary value is half the value of the instruments that you're using it to carry around, right? To get to your gigs, to try to make the money back to pay off your instrument.
Literally, I was driving like a fourth generation hand-me-down car, and this thing couldn't have been worth more than $700.
Like if somebody's gonna break into your car, like take the car, please.
Absolutely. Well, because I had my uilleann pipes there, I had my highland pipes in there, and then I had my border pipes. And when I did the math on that, I'm like, I'm driving a $700 car with, I don't want to say the number on those pipes, but
we can all imagine.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous juxtaposition right there.
By the way, if anybody's curious, I did a quick Google, and to get from where you're at to where I'm at, you'd still have to go another 700 miles for distance to get to the UK. So we're about 2,500 miles apart, you and I.
Okay.
And you probably have to go about 3,000 to get to the UK. So we're still in the neighborhood.
All right. Where are you based out of?
I'm in Utah, right in the middle of Utah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, man. Now, it seems like you do, speaking of distances, it seems like you travel a bit, but like in some of your videos and stuff, like the background is just a postcard for Connecticut. It's just lovely. Do you feel like I've always wondered, like it's the phenomenon of like having your heart tied to a place is interesting to me, you know? And so like having spent some time living in other places as well as just traveling around, do you still feel like there's a little cord tied to your heart that connects to Connecticut, like you know where it is at all times? And are there aspects of the land there that you love to see when you come back home from a trip? Or are you now a citizen of the Western Hemisphere? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think myself, like a lot of people from Connecticut, tend to hate on Connecticut, but there really are some beautiful spots.
We all hate on our own places, don't we?
The grass is always greener.
Yeah.
But there's some beautiful spots, and then it's when you grow up someplace, I grew up next to 1,000 acres of forest. And my family is all still in Connecticut. So there's, even when I was living in Scotland, which to me is the most beautiful country I've ever been to.
Speaking of grass is greener, quite literally, huh?
Literally, and going up to the highlands and you just feel like you're in a movie set. But you're like, wait, no, this is everyday life. But there's always going to be a part that, like, Connecticut, my family's there, and I'm just so comfortable in Connecticut.
Yeah, sure.
That feeling of being home. But I would say that Scotland, and I've heard a lot of people say this, there is a warmth to that country that I've heard people say they get off their plane and they're like, oh, I feel like I'm home immediately here. But in Connecticut, one of the things I like to do with these recordings is find cool places to film the videos, and that's also, I guess, one of the positives I think about, because we could talk about the positives and negatives of social media, but releasing the music there, it's really important to have the visual. Sometimes when I'm like doing all the audio stuff, I'm like, I need to make sure that my backgrounds are better, because we've got to we're posting to hopefully get views, and the visual in many ways is equally, if not more important than the audio. You can just
Jesse,
see.
I've got the solution for you, and it's free. Just dig up that photo. That photo, you playing drums with no shirt on? every single release from now on, man.
The shirtless drums. Oh my god, I don't know if I want to see this photo. Any listeners who go look that up, I apologize.
Oh, that's pretty cool though. That's I spent a very short time at Dell Tech. That's the most like personal. I guess I traveled to it's silly that now I'm blanking the name of it. What's the big Civil War battleground?
Gettysburg?
Gettysburg, yeah. I traveled to Gettysburg. That's like the most traveling I've done in that part of the country. So what little I saw was lovely, but I have very little experience of it.
There's lovely parts. I see, for me, I really want to go to your side of the Utah. I have so many friends and family that tell me that it's just spectacularly beautiful.
Come over, man. Colorado hosts this Spanish Peaks Pipers and Harpers gathering every once in a while.
A Pipers and Harpers gathering.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we see if we can get you on their radar for an instructor position or something. It's like it's like a weekend thing.
That
a small
great.
School. Get you some reasons to come over to the side of the country.
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely love that.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk to you about kit a little more. I don't think we could nerd out too much about it. And you mentioned your border pipes. You've got this quartet for border pipes and piano with Joanna Stark and Alex, is it Prentice? Max McWhorter?
Yep.
Is Max McWhorter related to Steve McWhorter? Or is that just a coincidence?
I think that's just a coincidence, but I would have to double check that. I've never actually met Max in person. That was another
COVID That's so cool.
recording, so I'd have to...
Of course it would be better to be able to meet in person, right? But it's one of the cool things about it.
amazing, and I if there's any silver lining from COVID is things like that, and the ability now that I can casually write to somebody in Australia or
Right.
Hong Kong and be like, hey, do you want to do a duet? Do you want to play tunes together? I think that's awesome.
That is awesome. But in that video, I get a good, we get a good view of your border pipes. You got a lot of hardware on the chanter. Tell me about the set you play. Who made it, and what kind of, what keys and stuff do you have on there?
Yeah, so that is that was made by Nigel Richards. It's a Garvey. They're Garvey border pipes, and I had the chanter that he was making when I purchased them. It had a high B key, which you kind of, it's, if anybody's familiar with clarinet, it's kind of like a little key above the high A hole that you play, and that one, there's a high B, and then there was a low, you play with our unused pinky. On that chanter you use a lot because it has a low F sharp, a low E, and that low F sharp key also doubles as you could play a low G sharp. So it gives quite a few extra notes on the chanter. It took me a lot of practice to get comfortable with it, and also just like used to having it in the hand with that bar and having the keys there.
That makes sense why it looks like so much hardware. That would be, it's got to be pretty long to reach down there, right?
Yeah, to get that low E.
Yeah.
And I love it. It really adds to the tunes you can play, and wanting to play more in sessions, wanting to play more with other instruments. There's a lot more that just the high B alone adds so many tunes you can play. And then just going down to the low E as well, also playing in different keys. So there's a lot of creative possibilities. It's something I want to do in the next year or two, is explore more of what that chanter can do. And then I've always thought of like taking it to a highland maker and being like, hey, listen, can you duplicate this for, and I don't know the answer on that. There might be physics reasons why they can.
I want to say yes because I want it to be true. I want that to be a thing. That would be awesome.
Yeah, no, and I think like from a harmony perspective as well, just having the ability to go down to that low E would add so much so much flavor to what we could do.
You think about harmonies. What one more note on top does. Well, why would one more note on bottom also open up the repertoire a ton?
Yeah, no. So I think there's a lot of room for growth and more creativity even in the next 20 years. One thing is that pipers can be somewhat stuck in wanting to keep, and this is always a fine line, but wanting to keep things as traditional as they were. I think particularly in the competition scene,
of course,
there is it's slow to change, which I think you need the balance. But I think I'm guessing from what I've heard of your taste in music already, I think we would probably agree that sometimes the pipe band competition scene can be too stuck of like we need to have our MSR and our medley has to be exactly 5.5 minutes long or whatever it is.
Right.
And it can be stifling to creativity.
It isn't. It isn't an interesting thing, right? Like I think I have been too flippant at times and said things that I do regret, because like I do have a real love for the competition scene, and it's like on the one hand, it's like to formalize this stuff is like it's almost like a preservation tool, and it can capture stuff and hang on to stuff for us that, a lot of things might have been lost. Tunes, styles of playing, stuff like that, to formalize them kind of preserves them in a way, and that's good, It makes a time capsule for all of us to be able to participate in. But at the same time, there's, like you say, there's a fine line there. There's a kind of balance, and either it's that time capsule needs to be bigger, or it's that we just need to feel comfortable putting one foot in that world and one foot in another or something. I don't know what the solution is, but it's a two-edged sword for sure. There's definitely good that it does for the art form, but I think there's also, it's also restrictive, like you say, it can be anyway.
Right, and I think there's room for both worlds.
For sure.
I think the competition scene, like I do enjoy it. I teach some bands. I love listening to really great bands, and it's amazing what they can do. And I also think there's room for this folk side, this fusion side, and there's some great players who do both. You look at like,
for sure.
and then there's I use like
speaking of Ross Miller, he actually wasn't Ross competing at like the Silver Chanter or something. I feel like
something.
Ross
Oh yeah,
this last year.
I mean, a lot of the guys in Verarian District, you take like a Ross Miller, a John Dew, they're very much a part of the competition scene, and also kind of pushing the boundaries in the folk fusion scene.
Yeah.
And I think there's also space. Like I love Ross Ainsley's stuff, and Ross is not a competition piper. I think he told me in one of my lessons with him that Gordon told him not to compete, and he just never really focused on competition.
I mean, whatever he does is great because what he does is great, so it's fine, you know.
Oh yeah, his small pipe album that was just recent release.
Oh,
is
with Breaching
amazing.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
love that.
So
speaking
good.
of use of low notes, you remember that tune, "The Badger and the Weasel"? It uses a low, what I guess.
I think it's
C
an F sharp.
Pipes. What is that? Yeah, it would be an F sharp if
it
were on A, but it's on
C.
C.
On the C pipe, so that down in minor third, that would be an A.
C, yeah, an A. Like, man, that's pretty. Man, that's pretty. I love that track. I mean, I love the whole album, but that track especially, dude. That one lives in my head.
Yeah. And there's so many now, these small pipes, listening to like the Lindsay System Chanter. There's just there's too much to learn.
That's what's next for you, right? You got to get yourself a Lindsay System Chanter.
I thought about it, and I keep telling myself, I'm like, no, you need to practice more of what you have before you buy another.
Yeah,
another
we
set.
all tell ourselves that. And you'll break down eventually.
Someday.
Well, speaking of MSRs, that's part of why I loved that one that we opened with Jen Butterworth, because I have been told before by my friends when I get all uppity about like, I'm tired of MSRs, you know, that like, well, look, James, if you listen to good MSRs, you wouldn't be tired of them, you know, and I'm like, okay, this one, that was a really good MSR, you know, like that set would convince me that, yes, this form is very valuable, you know. Did you on purpose go like, I'm going to use the March Strathspey reel format for this video, for this track, right? Or was that just like so natural, like you have to do it?
So where that came out of is for my master's project, I was trying to do 9 tracks that were based on countries or regions.
Oh, gotcha.
So there was one where it was based on like loosely based on Cape Breton tunes, and there was a few Cape Breton tunes, and then there was the Irish jig set. There was the set that I did some tunes with, and the harp player wrote a tune for. That was like the Connecticut USA set. There was a set from a Swedish set. So the idea was to take these tunes from different countries, and that one was, I'm like, what is for piping, what I think of when I think of the Scottish set, and it was the March Strathspey and real. Ever since I was playing, that was like the meat and potatoes of totally what I needed to practice. So I'm like, okay, I too have perhaps listened to too many MSRs in my life where I have become, for lack of a better word, bored of listening to March Strathspeys and reels. Especially in the band setting, because I felt like everybody was playing the same tunes. All at a super high level. So the idea I had with that track was, I want to play an MSR, but I want to do it in a way that I would want to listen to it, where it doesn't sound like every other MSR I've heard before, however great they may be. And then I was lucky that Jen Butterworth, she was a lecturer at RCS, and just like an amazing trad guitarist, she said yes to playing guitar for it. So I got that March. I learned, Finley McDonald taught it to me. I think it was written by an accordion player. John Somerville, I believe. Great little march. And then the Strathspey is a Fred Morrison tune. I love Fred's Strathspeys. I think they're so melodic.
Yeah.
And then the last one, the reel, is The Sound of Sleet, and I arranged it a little bit differently, played it not pointed. So that's another thing, is I don't think that we need to play every tune necessarily the same way. And I something I see in the competition scene is like there's these unwritten rules of a pipe band is going to play their March Strathspey reel with these tempos and in this style, and a solo piper, like you take the march, solo pipers play them typically much slower than a pipe band would. And I often wonder, like, okay, where do these unwritten rules come from of we have to play a march at this tempo if we're competing solo, we have to play at and these are approximate tempos, but at this tempo in the band setting.
Right.
And I know there's reasons for it, but I think it would be awesome for me to hear two solo players play drastically different tempos on their marches.
Yeah.
And like I love listening to fiddle players play marches because they'll do things that I wouldn't have thought to do as coming from that competition background. So that really in this set is what I was trying to think of, like how would I want to listen to it, and the sound of sleet, playing it not pointed, changing a few of the notes, I think was a big change I made for the reel. And then obviously putting whistle and guitar on it immediately adds to a more folk setting, so it clearly doesn't sound like a competition MSR.
Right.
But I wanted to take, for that track, I just wanted to take the idea of that MSR and using it for competition and bring it into more of a folk setting.
Well,
add some harmonies to it.
It worked well. I love listening to it. And dude, will anybody in the world ever be able to say that they're tired of the sound of sleet? I feel like nope. Like that's a tune that's been around since for me, in my awareness since I started playing pipes for decades now, and I'm still not tired of it. That is just a great tune.
It's such a great tune, and it works pointed. It sounds great. It works straight. You can fast, slow. I just think there's a reason certain tunes last as long as they do, and that one is one that we're gonna keep hearing.
Yeah,
it's so great.
Well, then how about let's look at another region. It must have been Ireland you were thinking of with the Irish jigs that you did with. I think that they pronounce this name Oisin McCann, maybe.
I think it's Oisin. I think it's Oisin. I'm probably saying it wrong. I remember I had to ask him specifically, and I had him record how to say his name. And then
so beaten. Oh, okay. You were gonna say
Yoan.
Yeah.
And Yoan, I believe it's Yoan Beaton.
Gotcha.
Again, coming from New England, these names are new to me, and I was doing my best, but those two. Those two were just phenomenal musicians, and again, I was in school with both of them. I met them when I was living in Scotland, and that was another part of the project when we were all kind of locked down. I I wanted to do the Irish set. So Oisin is from Ireland, I believe. And he is just a monster musician. Talk about somebody who plays multiple instruments extremely well. So I contacted him about doing an Irish set, selected the tunes, and that one came about. I recorded I think I just recorded the uilleann pipe part and played it through with a click track, sent it to him for some of his ideas. He put the flute on and he wanted to add some guitar as well. So that was his idea, to add the guitar. So he added that, and then I think the last step was I contacted Yo, and I'm like, the one I want to add Baron to this. And so then that's how that all kind of came together. I don't know if I had originally thought that I was going to have Baron on that piece. So it's kind of cool how the process can grow from, I thought it was just going to be an uilleann pipe flute duet.
Yeah.
And then, then that's how that all came apart. And then I think Oisin sent his recordings back to me, and then I re-recorded my uilleann pipe part because I thought that matched what he. So it was a back and forth process, and that one you can kind of see at least for the guitar and the baron. And this is another kind of like record. I think they did those. They recorded the video and the audio at the same time.
Yeah.
Because certain. I guess like Baron in particular, you're not reading notes. It's very hard to fake it and be playing the same. Make sure you're playing the same exact thing. If I'm playing a pipe band setting where I know exactly what grace notes I'm doing, it's pretty easy to play along with myself. But if I play something on the drum kit or percussion where I'm improvising a lot of the fills or things like that, it's hard to reproduce that because it comes out different every time.
Totally, and have the video sync and everything like that.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at like that kind of process, like I'm not digging, like I'm not trying to be in any way a critical, not at all. Just like there are different methods and different ways, right? So I'm just thinking about like that kind of process where you can put together the general idea and you can kind of hand it to another person and see what they add, and then hand it to another person and they hand it back, and you end up with this product that it to some degree is like even a pleasant surprise to you, like you're kind of sharing the creative work in a way, comparing that to some of the other stuff that you've done where like you're live looping with yourself or you're doing split screen videos with yourself, where like maybe that's more work but you also have tighter control, Do you feel like you prefer working one way versus the other, or there's just pros and cons for everything, so for different projects it's different? Any strong feelings when contrasting those two different sort of like formats for multi-track recordings?
I think again, like I think you it said it right, when there's benefits to both. Sometimes when I like really want to have all the control and I'm on a ego trip, it's fun. It's fun to just record all the parts myself, and that way I know exactly what I want it to do. I can do as many takes. I can experiment with different things. But then the flip side of that is it's so cool to hear other people's ideas for something that like I just wouldn't have come up with. And that happened with recording with the harpist Haley a lot, where I'd send her a track and she'd write out an accompaniment part that sounded awesome. That I don't play harp, I wouldn't have been able to do that, but it's great to get the feedback of other musicians, and then that changes what I like. That one where he sent it back to me, and then I changed some of my playing. That kind of it's a really enjoyable process to hear somebody else's ideas, and then that changes my creative process. So it's a different challenge, but I enjoy them both. It's definitely a lot more work to do the split screen and record all of the parts myself, because that first I have to practice all the instruments.
On all of them,
and then like guitar, that's not my primary instrument, so that I actually have to practice some parts, and I still want to get better at it. But so it's good in that regard, but it definitely takes me a long time to do some of those multi-track things. And if I haven't been practicing much with guitar, my poor little calluses are
the
not
calluses, right.
are not built up enough.
You don't have to name any names, but I'm just like imagining. Have you ever been in a situation where like with the harp, like you say, you don't play harp, and so like you're gonna reach out to a harpist and you say, "Can you do this?" and they'll do something and be like, "Oh, that's great, thank you," But like a lot of these other instruments, you might reach out to somebody and be like, "Will you do a track with whistle or something like that?" Right? Where it's an instrument that you yourself play. If you had a vision in mind, and then what they send back isn't what you wanted, or you want something different. Can that be infuriating? And then you're stuck in like this social position where it's like, I'm just going to record it myself. Oh, but then they'll know,
Yeah, so that can certainly happen, and that's just part of like navigating social interactions of and relinquishing some creative control when you collaborate with people.
Yeah,
that's just a part of it. That certainly can be frustrating. And it is often tempting if it's a part that you would have liked a different way, if you can record it that way, not to do it.
But it's never happened to you. If anybody who's collaborated with you is listening right now, it's never happened with Jesse. So
No. The worst thing I'd ever do is lower that part in the mix if I really didn't want it to. But it's still there. It's just a little bit.
I feel like I heard a story once that like maybe it was like Phil Collins, somebody who was a big deal, having done like a percussion track for George Harrison, decades ago or something, and then like the tune, being released and the part that they'd recorded wasn't on there. It wasn't in the final mix, and then like I think it was Phil Collins, and that like he then had asked George about it. He was like, what happened to that track that line I recorded for you? And that George sent him the original cut, and there was this percussion track, and it was just horrible. He was just like, just horrible. Didn't sound good at all. And he was like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. I'm so glad you cut that and stuff." And then later he found out that George Harrison had actually recorded a terrible percussion track specifically to send that to Phil Collins, like as a joke or something like that.
That's hilarious.
I just laid a lot of pipe to relate a very shaky story, so maybe I shouldn't have done that. But
no, but to be clear, nobody I've ever collaborated with has sent me something that I had to cut out completely. There's certainly the tuning would be the biggest one.
Oh, sure, yeah.
If especially with pipe stuff, if a pipe chanter is not lining up perfect, that would be, I'd say, the most common, rather than a creative thing. The most common difficulty is that if it's slightly out of tune, I'm not using melodyne.
I was going to say, as a matter of principle, do you try to avoid that, or like as long as we're pulling the curtain back, is it okay to use that sometimes?
My rule is if it whatever sounds good, but it's not a principle thing that I don't use it. It's just it's a lot of editing. I also don't have the software; it's quite expensive as well.
Oh, dude! I tried the correct pitch in GarageBand on my pipes once. Does not sound good.
Does not do that. Yeah. But then again, there's pitch correction that I think you could do really creatively. Of sometimes you want it to sound that way, and I haven't gone down that road in my editing yet. But I certainly, at some point in my life, I have used pitch correction before. There was something on the border pipes where it was one note that I was holding out for I want to say like 8 beats, and the chanter went flat, and rather than just re-record the whole part, I just did some pitch correction for those. Yeah, a little bit, and I didn't feel guilty about it. It is again something that we need to know as listeners, that people do this on their instruments. I don't think I'm alone in that. I'm not great at it yet. So most of what you hear is pretty authentic, but I'm not opposed to pitch correction.
Yeah.
If you ever hear me singing and it sounds good, that would be pitch correction for sure. So for future reference, if there's a song out and it's in tune, I've learned how to use Melodyne.
Yeah, then we'll know. There will be signs. Suddenly Jesse puts out like a full vocal album, right?
Yeah.
Jesse singing all the parts for the Irish Tenors Classics or something.
I'll sound like Drake singing Irish music.
That's right. Hey, why not? That's the next thing, huh? That's part of it, man. That's part of it. Like sometimes folks in our community, maybe part of it is the commitment to tradition, right? But sometimes folks in our community get a little uppity about like pushing envelopes. I mean, classic example, of course, is Gordon Duncan. Where like some people be like, oh, you don't play those songs on that instrument, or you don't combine those instruments or whatever it is. Like sometimes people push the envelope and it's magical and it sticks. But I don't think we give as much consideration to the fact that, like, I think it's a fact anyway, that every time you get an envelope pushing that sticks, that's backed up by a couple hundred envelope pushings that didn't stick, But somebody's got to try stuff or you're never going to find out, And so I don't know. Where am I going with this? Maybe I'm just rambling here and ranting here, but it feels a little bit like we've got to be open to trying stuff out, even if it's like singing trad Irish stuff like Drake with pitch correction, Whatever it is, let's try it and see. And if it doesn't stick, at least now we know. And maybe somebody else will do it really well later and it will stick,
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of, like, for me, I know there's like some fear of sounding cheesy. Sure. Or not wanting to be judged by other pipers for releasing a bagpipe cover, and that's something, like, especially posting stuff on social media, where I am trying to have the balance of, like, posting tunes I really like, or that I know I'd get more views if I posted more bagpipe covers, and I like some of them, and some of them work, some of them don't, but it's that pushing that envelope that you have to try it. And Gordon Duncan, I think that is the great example, like the Just for Seamus album. Do you know? Are you familiar with the story behind that?
I am familiar with the story, but just in case anybody isn't, like, it would be let's run a short version of it, like, because honestly, the first time I heard that album, like when I was younger and was first hearing it, I assumed Seamus was like his son or something like that, right? Like that it was a genuine dedication to like a person who he felt.
That's what I had thought as well.
Right, but that's not the case. Seamus was
to
not
my
his
knowledge,
child.
not his child. To my knowledge, and I'm going to give the big caveat here. This is a word of mouth thing, and I'm not 100% sure of the accuracy of this story. But to what my understanding was that when there was a piping showcase or something at the College of Piping,
competition or something,
or
right?
competition, and it was Gordon playing and somebody else, and Gordon, of course, played some pretty wild stuff as he did, and I think Seamus said something along the lines, paraphrasing, of like, if this is the future of piping, I don't want to be a part of it.
Yeah, it was definitely something like pretty heavy like that for sure. Yeah, or at least that's the version I've heard as well. Is that he said something like that.
And then, so then when Gordon released that album, he sarcastically titled it Just for Seamus, where it really does do some envelope pushing. And I think Gordon's a great example of, like, of course, everybody is familiar with him in the piping world, of really pushing envelopes. And I think he also had some tracks that I do hear now that I'm like, oh, that does sound a little bit cheesy, but you have to take those risks. Right. You have to run the risk of, like, 10 years from now being like, oh, what was I doing with that overly reverb cathedral setting that I don't like that anymore. But that happens in any music. And it also, like, music, art is a lot like fashion, that there's styles of a certain time. Like, you think about 80s music, it has a very particular 80s pop music.
Oh, for sure, yeah, man.
And it sounds dated to us now, but at the time that was the hippest thing going. So when you're pushing envelopes, not all of it is gonna last and sound cool 10 years from now. But I think you having the willingness to take those risks is awesome. And yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna release some stuff that even a year goes by and I'm gonna be like, ooh, I did not like that, but it'll happen, and that's just part of the creative process.
Well, and part of what I love about the internet is, like, and not that I'm telling you what to do as an artist, Jesse, not at all. Like, you do whatever you want to in future, right? But one thing that I do love is when artists aren't overly worried about hiding their past work, to match their current, like, sound or look, right? Mm-hmm. And because being able to have, like, a readily available archive of how did they get there, where, like, you can listen to an artist's, like, first few, like SoundCloud tracks, right? And then compare that to the studio album that they just put out, and you can hear little seeds of ideas that came to fruition in the album 10 years later, to be able to see that trajectory, there's something really cool about that, you know?
Yeah, and again, I think that's one of the great things about social media and seeing people start their process there, hearing their progress, and being able to go back. I mean, so you did some searching and you found my old McTallimore days. That I like through my teenage years, I was playing with that family band, and then I took a long hiatus. I want to say I was still playing the music, but for about 10 years, I became a music teacher at a high school, and I was playing a lot of drum set there, but mostly just teaching and not so involved in the Scottish or Irish scene. And it was really not until I went back to, I just auditioned on a whim to go to RCA's. I joked about the doctor and medical school thing, but I was going to go to medical school. I was ready to apply. I was ready to apply to medical school. I'd taken all my prereqs and was going to take the MCATs, and I'm like, you know what? I've always wanted to go to Scotland. I'll just take a year off from this, and I recorded an audition on my phone, sent it over, and I'm like, if I get in, I get in, and I did, and
that year off is extended.
Yeah. I fell in love with the music again, and I'm like, this is what I want to do.
As a person who's enjoying the music you produce, I'm glad you made that decision. I hope that you never regret it, because I won't, you know.
I'm very happy with the choice right now.
Hello friends, just a quick note to make you aware, this podcast is something that I love doing and I will keep doing it no matter what, but if you want to send me money, I won't say a nay. The easiest way to do that is through Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. We do regular drawings for bagpipey albums, books, sheet music, and more, including Droning On swag. All patrons are in the figurative hat from whence the names of winners are drawn, and there are other benefits to members as well. They're all listed there at patreon.com/DroningOnPodcast. And speaking of swag, another way to support the show is to buy cool stuff from my little online shop, bagpipeswag.com. There you can find Droning On stuff, as well as other pipey and drummy things that my friends and I make. And if you feel so inclined, I genuinely invite you to follow the show on Facebook. It's super fun to have a way to interact over there, to discuss past episodes, and I also like to bounce ideas off of you, my friends, ask you for input on upcoming interviews, that kind of stuff. I'd like to invite you to join in on virtual book clubs and probably lots of other cool stuff that I just haven't even thought of yet as of this recording. It's easy to find. Just get on Facebook and search Droning On Podcast. And if Instagram is more your jam, we're also on there at droning.on.podcast. You can also email the show at thedroningonpodcast@gmail.com. And links to these sites, social media accounts, and more are in the show notes. Leaving the show a positive rating and review helps others to find it, so feel free to do that. And thank you again for listening, you cool human you.
You've done some uilleann pipe study with Jarlath Henderson. He's in the medical field, isn't he?
He's a doctor. We had a lot of conversations about that because he talk about a talented person. He's a doctor, amazing uilleann piper, amazing singer, super nice guy.
The music he puts out, I'm like, why isn't he making a living off of music? He could, you know.
He certainly could, and I think we discussed that. I think he's very content. Like, he also has that scientific brain. He loves medicine. But he also plays the gigs he wants to play.
Oh, that's a luxury. That's nice.
And that's something that I think every professional musician has to figure out a balance for them in their life. Because you play a lot of gigs that you're doing it for money, which there's nothing wrong with that. And then just finding enough of, like, for me, some of it becomes like, is this now just a job, or am I actually enjoying playing music? Because if it's just a job, I could be making a lot more money doing something else.
Doctor, man.
So it's again finding that balance of making enough money that you're happy and content, and then being able to play gigs you enjoy. And I think Jarlath has a really good thing going where he has a career he loves, and then he gets to be this amazing Irish musician playing some awesome gigs and doing the tours. I'm sure he has a very busy schedule doing both the medicine and trad music, but
yeah.
There's some sacrifices that have to be made for both. But I think when we discussed it, he really liked that music was just still enjoyable for him. That he never had to play gigs he didn't want to play for money.
That makes sense. I mean, it's a thing that, like, I think those of us who are like hobbyist musicians, not doing it for a living, like sometimes we maybe tell ourselves that as like a way to make ourselves feel better, you know? Like, well, if I give, you know, like I hate spreadsheets and I do spreadsheets 5 days a week, but it's okay to hate spreadsheets because then I can play music on the weekend, right? And if I flip-flopped that, then I would hate music. And so it's like, it's almost like giving ourselves an excuse for not trying harder, you know, to some degree. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think there's something to and teaching. I'm a terrible inspiration to my students. I'm like, don't become a professional musician. Just do it. Continue loving it. And there's a degree of truth in that because it's such a hard field to make a living in, and then it also. Even like for me, I there's sometimes where I don't pick up my bagpipes because I want to. They're not cathartic to me anymore. Bagpipes in general are not a relaxing instrument to play. Maybe maybe small pipes. So for me, I'm guitar or whistles. There's much more what I gravitate to. If I'm just playing like after a long day and I want to sit down and enjoy myself, I'm not reaching for my Highland bagpipes. That is not my relaxing playing. But I think one of the great things about playing an instrument as a hobbyist, an amateur, or even is that you're having something that you have that creative outlet for. Yeah. And I think that's important for people, whether it be art or music or just having an outlet where you can kind of shut off the world and just get lost in your creativity.
Yeah. Speaking of whistles, do you play Colin Goldie whistles?
I do play Colin Goldie whistles.
Dude, are those like the only whistles allowed on the professional trad scene? Because I swear, once you notice it, that's all there is. That's all. And I've heard they're great, so that must be why. Are they so great? Are they like the best in the world?
So I have not played a lot of other whistles, so my answer for comparison is not great. They are great whistles. I love playing them.
Yeah.
I definitely recommend them if you can get on his waiting list to get 1 or 2 or 12.
Yeah, there's another guy who like is at a point where he's doing what he loves when he wants to do it. I'm sure, right? Because he's got to have quite the wait list.
I think he has the wait list, but because they're all handmade, there's only so much I think it's still a hustle. Even like in the world of uilleann piping, you'd think that I in my economic brain, which is not a good economic brain, but I feel like, okay, these uilleann pipers are making instruments for $10,000+, and they have a year wait list. They must be rolling in money, but I think they're not. It's a lot of cost for the materials. Yeah, it's a lot of time to make each set one by one.
And there's got to be time spent with past customers coming back and saying, I've got a problem with the reed, I've got a problem with the chanter, etc.
Right. And uilleann pipe makers, it really is like you're buying the instrument, but you're also buying customer support for life because it's so finicky. The reeds, talk about a pain. So yeah, I don't think anybody's rich off of making any traditional instruments.
So Colin Goldie probably isn't swimming in a Scrooge McDuck style.
No. I think it's still
coins or anything.
I think it Goldie coins.
Goldie coins.
I know. I think it's a labor of love for all of them. And he's a really nice guy if you ever call up and order whistles from him. But it's super common that I think he really I think Overton and Goldie not knowing my whistle history as well as I should. I think they kind of set the standard for what a low whistle like should or could sound like. And there's a lot of other great whistles out there as well.
I
so
certainly
that's not
don't
to
mean
say
to speak poorly of other whistle makers, of course.
But they're fantastic, and we talk about spending money on instruments. At some point, I'll probably contact someone and be like, I want 12 keys.
Yeah, give me the whole range.
When I have disposable income, when I win my first Grammy for putting auto-tune on Highland pipes.
There you go, yeah. Man. Yeah, it does seem like you turn on Celtic Connections or any trad fest or anything, and you're gonna see that it's got a distinctive profile. You know, it's like just about every at least every piper that I know of who also picks up whistle. It seems like it's always a Colin Goldie.
Yeah, it's Ross plays Goldies.
All the Rosses, right?
Yeah, all the Rosses. I
Ainsley,
think
Miller, etc. All the what's his? Oh man, now I feel bad. What's his name? Hutley.
Ali Hutton.
Ali Hutton.
Yep.
I think I've seen him playing it too.
I'm pretty sure, and yeah, it's kind of the gold standard not to keep making the same
Nice.
pun.
It's the gold standard.
but I have played some MK whistles. They sound great. There's there's a guy in New York. I've tried some of Nick. I think Metcalf is his name. His whistle. I got a low B flat from him. I can't play it yet. That's quite a stretch. But there's I want to get my hands on some of the wooden whistles and see how those sound.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw somebody making a keyed whistle. I'm very curious about that.
Interesting. Kind of a silver flute kind of thing turned around.
Yeah, I think because I majored in jazz drum set for the undergrad, I think my brain is constantly wanting to have more chromatic notes than we often get on the pipes. When I was taking lessons with Ross Ainsley, he joked with me. He's like, "You should have been a clarinet player, not a not a border player," because I kept asking him for tunes with accidentals.
Yeah.
So I anytime I hear whistle players or pipers kind of trying out new notes, I'm very much drawn to it. Or there was a trend going around with, what was it? Was it a drone tune to D?
Oh,
or
yes, to
C?
D. Yeah, where you'd pop the top piece off and.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm like, I was digging that. I didn't even try it, but I love that.
Dude, I don't know if I'll ever be able to pull it off, but I've been talking with David over at the 3D printed bagpipes guy, because like that's a, you can mess around, right? About like, how could we make modular highland pipe drones, right? With like multiple openings up and down the shaft, so you could like pop a cork out to have a different tone all of a sudden.
Oh my god!
Wouldn't that be cool?
I tried to like fake this in Pro Tools, where I did some pitch shifting, where I'd record between my 3 or 4 different types of pipes I had. I had like the B flat, the A drones. I was trying to get chords with drones, and they sounded good on their own. It was the switch that I need to figure out a more natural way of making them sound that way. But yeah, it would be so cool to almost have like a pedal board, like an organist, except with drone sounds.
Yeah, man, totally.
And uilleann pipes, I think there's some makers who have done like the switch where they have a drone switch where you're tuned to D and you click it and it goes over to G. So there's creative minds at work coming up with these more ways for us to spend money on these instruments.
That's what it is. Man, Jesse, I just realized I've been keeping you for an hour and a half. Are you feeling like you're all interviewed out?
I'm really enjoying myself, but if you have any other questions, I'm having a great time chatting.
Well, that's the thing. I've been having such a nice time. I didn't even notice how long we've been talking, so I don't want to keep you forever. I'd like to think that this podcast is the Joe Rogan experience of bagpiping podcasts, in no way other than a willingness to let episodes run very long.
Awesome. It's been great chatting with you. I can't. It's always funny hearing yourself speak back when we do listen to this.
Yeah,
I'll be like, wow, is my voice really that high pitched? I am a leprechaun.
A leprechaun. And that's one thing too, just so you know, Jesse, like I tend to run kind of a lengthy schedule so that I can keep up with it. So it might be a few months before I get this one put together and put out. But the nice thing about that is that by then you and I will both have forgotten about this conversation, and then we can enjoy listening to it.
Well, I'll look forward to it.
Yeah, man. So how about this? We'll fade the episode out on Lullaby for Mel, and let me just mention, I'll insert something into the episode later too, but let me just mention again here that I'll have links to Jesse's work in the show notes, the YouTube channel and the bio and anything else that I can find on the internet to make it easy for people to find. Should I make it really easy to find that photo of you drumming shirtless, or should I leave that as like a treasure hunt that people just need to look if they find it good for them?
It depends. Do you want to get a bunch of people to unsubscribe from your page or not? I'll leave that decision up to you.
Fair enough. So look in the show notes and find out if I made this a treasure hunt or not. And then before we go into Lullaby for Mel, Jesse, just like is there anything on the horizon? Are we all about to be surprised by a tune book from you or an album, or what are you working on right now?
So there is always the thought of an album coming. That I hope to start recording a full-length album. I haven't put a tune book in the works. Maybe if I get this album done and I write a bunch of tunes for it, that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
So the album would be the next thing. Just releasing. I hope to in 2023 release a lot more material on my my YouTube, my Facebook, my Instagram. So I can't keep up with all the social media trends, but I try to. I'm gonna release a lot there, and then a full length album, hopefully by the end of 2023, potentially into 2024. That's the plan. But as we know, the best laid plans of mice and men.
Of course, yeah. Good intentions. That's how they paved the road to hell, huh? So what about this Lullaby for Mel? Was this because Ross was one of your instructors? It was pretty easy to be like, hey man, can I, let's do this tune? Because he appears in the recording as well, right?
Yeah. So I gotten that arrangement. It is the bagpipe harmony arrangement. He also wrote the harmonies for that.
Oh, did he?
I did part of RCS students put on a concert at the Celtic Connections Festival, and usually they have like a highland pipe feature, and so about 4 or 5 of us played it for the concert Lullaby for Mel. So I love the tune.
Oh yeah, it's
and I was taking lessons with Ross. I said, hey, if I do this recording, would you play on it as well? So it's kind of a mix of his arrangement, and then I had the overall idea of let me ask my friend Haley Hewitt to play harp on this. So she came up with the harp part, and then just the concept of starting with the solo pipes and the harp, and then add in the second piper, which was Ross, and then bring in all those pipers who most of them were studying at RCS at the time. But in that video, the bands, I was pretty humbled that all of them agreed to do it, and you had representation from SFU, Field Marshal, Inverary, Shots and Dykehead. So I'm like, wow, it was awesome to play with all those
that's a stellar
great
group.
pipers.
Well, and it comes through in the sound too. It's beautiful, beautiful recording of